What would you call a man who acted super nice and kind when cameras were rolling, but the second they stopped recording, he turned into a total jerk, fake, two-faced, or even a back? But in Hollywood, being fake is how you survive, and nobody was better at it than Johnny Carson. But people didn't remember him for being fake. They remembered him because he was absolutely terrifying if you ever made him mad, because nobody could survive when he was angry. So, what would happen if someone didn't just annoy Johnny, but made him really hate them? Watch this video till the end to find out why Johnny hated Jerry Seinfeld and what Johnny did to him. Johnny Carson was the king of late-night TV, but the people who worked with him knew his smile disappeared when the cameras turned off. He built his success on smiling, perfect timing, and getting people to trust him. But this same man was called cold, mean, and sometimes just plain cruel by the people who worked with him. Bill Maher said he was mean. Jerry Seinfeld didn't disagree. The rumors were true. Carson could be dangerous if you crossed him. Behind his big smile and happy personality was a man who kept track of everything, remembered everyone, and got revenge whenever he could. Jerry Seinfeld started his career knowing all this about Carson. Jerry's comedy was like a robot. No feelings, no emotions, built like a machine. Every joke was perfect. Every pause was planned. To Carson, this was a totally different type of comedy. Carson wanted comedians to show their feelings. He expected comics to share something personal in their jokes, to show they were humble when people laughed. Seinfeld gave him nothing personal, nothing messy, nothing human. The audience thought it was brilliant. Carson thought it was fake and empty. This was the real reason they didn't like each other. Carson had turned The Tonight Show into a place where comedians could become famous. If he liked you, he would wave you over to sit on his couch after your act. That wave meant you were legit. It meant you belonged in comedy. Seinfeld never got that wave. He got to perform on stage, but never got invited to sit down, never got Carson's approval. For a man like Carson, leaving Seinfeld out was totally on purpose. He didn't think Seinfeld had earned the right to sit in that chair. Maher later told everyone what many people had only whispered about. Carson was like a king who didn't like being challenged. For every nice story about him, there were 10 stories about him being cruel. He drank a lot, and when he did, his nice guy mask came off. The sweet guy from TV became a man who would tear people apart. The people who worked with him called him cold. He could smile while filming, then turn on them like a snake when they went backstage. If he didn't like you, your career was over. That was his power. Just so you know, none of this is made up. Carson's meanness is well documented. His divorce was so nasty that he broke into his wife's apartment. We'll talk about that later. But it's true that his ego was easily hurt, and when someone hurt it, he would attack back. He was a man who demanded respect, but didn't always give it back. Seinfeld never played Carson's game. He didn't compliment him, didn't bow down, didn't pretend, and Carson noticed. The Tonight Show couch was saved for comics who showed Carson's values, being grateful, warm, and humble. Or to put it more clearly, he wanted them to kiss up to him, flatter him. But Seinfeld didn't do any of that. The crazy thing is that Seinfeld was becoming the face of a new comedy style, even though he was racist and had controversial opinions about Don't worry, we'll talk about this in detail at the end of this video. His TV show was built on nothing, but it became everything, a huge cultural hit. Carson, watched as a comedian he had dismissed, became one of the most powerful names in entertainment. Even worse, Seinfeld's type of humor had no place for the traditions Carson valued. It wasn't storytelling. It wasn't about being human. It was perfect technique without any heart. Carson. Seinfeld was stealing what comedy was supposed to be. Carson's anger didn't need to be loud. Carson was a man of silence, of not giving approval. Not showing approval was as loud as saying something mean. When Seinfeld became successful, Carson stayed quiet. No couch invitation, no praise, just cold distance that said more than any insult could. For Seinfeld, not getting Carson's approval actually motivated him. Some people even say that Seinfeld wanted to prove Carson wrong. He would never be part of Carson's comedy family. He would be the outsider who succeeded without the king's crown. What Carson hated most was that Seinfeld had no heart in his comedy. Carson once said, "The best comedy makes you laugh until you cry. Laugh until you think." That was Carson's rule for comedy. Seinfeld's comedy didn't do either. It was smart, but it didn't go deep. It was entertaining, but it didn't connect with people's feelings. Carson saw the money, the fame, the TV ratings, but he didn't see a soul in Seinfeld's work. For Carson, that was unforgivable. This wasn't just two people not liking each other. This was a fight between two different generations. Carson came from a world where comedy had meaning, where comedians turned their pain into laughter. Seinfeld perfected a world where comedy avoided any deep meaning, where pain didn't matter at all. One demanded depth, the other threw it away. To Carson, Seinfeld represented everything wrong with modern comedy: shallow, arrogant, disconnected from real people. Carson never attacked Seinfeld publicly. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. But behind closed doors, people were talking. Carson was cold. Carson was mean. Carson punished comedians who didn't play his game. Jerry Seinfeld wasn't punished though. Why? What was the reason? He was just ignored. And in the entertainment business, being ignored was worse than being punished. This is where our story really begins. The king of late night, a man who was feared for his cruelty as much as he was loved for his charm, looked at a comedian who built an empire on being emotionally distant. Two men who defined different eras of comedy, connected not by respect, but by rejection. The audience never saw any of this. They saw a smiling TV host and a rising comedy star. But backstage, the truth was much darker. Johnny Carson saw Jerry Seinfeld not as a genius, not as someone who could replace him, but as everything he stood against. To Carson, Seinfeld was someone who never deserved the couch, never deserved the crown, and never earned his respect. Before we dive deeper into their hate for each other, you need to know some things. Johnny Carson's public image was perfect, but the deeper you look, the uglier it gets. His Tonight Show was built as a temple of original comedy, the place where pure comedic talent could shine. But Carson himself was accused of stealing material. Bill Maher and Jerry Seinfeld both admitted this on record. Carson stole jokes. His Answer Man segment was a recycled idea from Steve Allen. The loud, dramatic Art Fern character was taken from Rodney Dangerfield. Even the character of Aunt Blappy, which Carson used to get laughs, was an idea stolen directly from Jonathan Winters. For a man who demanded honesty from others, he cheated when it helped him. Two comedians. Stealing material is the worst sin you can commit. It's the one rule you never break. Carson not only broke it, but he also built entire regular segments around stolen ideas, and he never gave credit to the original creators. That hypocrisy was obvious to younger comics who grew up looking up to him. Seinfeld was one of them. He studied Carson's work, respected the platform, but saw the double standard. Here was the king of comedy, criticizing arrogance while quietly recycling other people's work. That hypocrisy really hurt. Oh, another thing, Carson didn't just steal material, he stole careers. If you got on his bad side, your chance at late-night TV disappeared. Colleagues said he was a control freak. He froze out comedians he didn't like, cancelled their return appearances, and never told anyone why. In the entertainment business, that silence meant death for your career. One story after another painted Carson as the man who could destroy you with nothing more than deciding not to call you back. That was his real power. Not charm, not jokes, but control. His personal life had the same coldness. Carson's marriages fell apart one after another, leaving trails of bitterness. His second divorce got explosive when he broke into his wife's apartment. That action wasn't denied. It was remembered as one of the most aggressive things he did in his private life. A man with millions of dollars, loved by America, broke down doors to control his ex. It wasn't romantic. It was obsessive, invasive, and ugly. For all his calm behavior on TV, off camera he was reckless. His mean streak didn't stop there. Carson drank heavily, and when he did, he became uncontrollable. Staff described him as aggressive, cold, and terrifying to be around. His drinking brought out a disgusting side, and many people kept their distance from him. The same man America trusted to make them laugh was hated by the people who worked closest to him. Maher summed it up perfectly. For every story about what a great guy Carson was, there were 10 stories about what a jerk he could be. Those weren't exaggerations, they were warnings. Now, imagine putting Jerry Seinfeld into that world. A comedian who refused to kiss up, who treated comedy as a craft and not a confession. He didn't try to please Carson. He didn't bend to Carson's will. In a world where Johnny demanded loyalty, Seinfeld stood apart. That independence looked like arrogance to Carson. To Carson, it was unforgivable. Carson wasn't going to help a man who reminded him of his own words.